Today, we are breaking down an event that has absolutely sent tremors through the world of geopolitics. We're talking about the Caracas operation. It started with reports of a full-scale American invasion of Venezuela, which is, shocking enough, but then came the second piece of news, the one that made the entire world stop and listen. The sitting president of a sovereign nation had been taken from his own presidential palace. So, let's get into how something this unprecedented actually happened. All right, to really get a handle on this, we need to look at the anatomy of the operation itself. From what sources are reporting, this was a carefully planned, two-pronged attack. So, step one was a massive show of force, just sheer, overwhelming power meant to paralyze the entire country. And step two? That was a much more precise, surgical move. It's called a decapitation strike. And yeah, it's as serious as it sounds. A high-risk, high-reward strategy to take out a country's leadership and hope the government collapses. The whole thing kicked off with what's being described as blanket bombing over the capital, Caracas. We're talking U.S. Air Force jets, Navy missiles, the works, all pounding strategic targets. Think military bases, communication hubs, even oil tankers. The goal? Cripple Venezuela's ability to fight back, which it did. It led to an immediate paralysis of the country's defenses and, as you can imagine, widespread panic. But while all that chaos was unfolding in the skies over Caracas, the second, and frankly more audacious phase of the operation was already in motion, a move that people are calling historically unprecedented. The details of this raid are just incredible. An elite U.S. Delta Force team reportedly infiltrated the Miraflores presidential palace. They didn't just smash their way in. They bypassed security, neutralized the presidential guard, and extracted President Nicolás Maduro and his wife. And here's the real kicker. They weren't taken to Guantanamo or some military base. They were flown directly to New York City to stand trial under American law. Okay, so that's the what. But the real question, the one everyone is asking, is why? Why now? Let's try to unpack the motives behind this absolutely extraordinary intervention. Some analysts say the writing has been on the wall for a while now, pointing to a bigger shift in U.S. foreign policy. As one source put it, when you symbolically rename your Department of Defense to the Ministry of War, you're signaling a much more aggressive intervention-first approach to the world. So this is where it gets really crucial. You have the official reason versus what analysts believe are the real strategic goals. Publicly, the U.S. says this is about combating drug trafficking. But many geopolitical experts are saying, hold on, the real motives here are twofold. First, get control of Venezuela's oil reserves, which are, by the way, the largest in the entire world. And second, take out a government that's friendly with China and Russia. It's about reasserting American influence in a region it has long considered its own backyard. Now, an action this huge doesn't just happen in a bubble. It's already sending massive shockwaves across the globe. So let's dig into the immediate economic and diplomatic fallout. The first thing you see is the economic hit. It's pretty simple, really. When you attack a major oil exporter like Venezuela and essentially put it under a blockade, you're yanking a huge amount of supply off the global market. The result? Analysts are pretty much unanimous that we're about to see a massive spike in crude oil prices. And that spike creates a really serious problem for countries like India. See, India is a significant buyer of Venezuelan oil, so now it's facing this double threat. First, the potential for severe supply disruptions, and second, the huge economic shock that comes from skyrocketing energy prices. That could have a real negative impact on its own growth. Diplomatically, the reaction has been fast and, frankly, fearful. Venezuela's next-door neighbor, Colombia, immediately called for an emergency UN meeting. Their president, Petro, is openly worried that his country could be the next one on the list. And from the major world powers, sharp, immediate condemnation. Russia didn't mince words, calling it an act of armed aggression. That right there sets the stage for a major showdown on the international stage. So right now, the entire world is basically holding its breath, waiting to see how China responds. The risk of this whole thing escalating is incredibly high. Some are even worried the U.S. might start intercepting Russian oil tankers, which would blow this conflict wide open. But with all these global power plays going on, let's bring it back to the ground. What about Venezuela itself? This operation has left an entire nation teetering on the brink, staring into a deeply uncertain future. The central question right now is, what's next? You've removed the head of state, but in doing so, have you just created a massive power vacuum with no clear plan for who or what is supposed to fill it? Well, the answer coming from inside Venezuela seems to be one of pure defiance. The country's defense minister has gone public, vowing that the military will not surrender. He says they will keep fighting for their sovereignty, which tells you this conflict is likely far from over. The U.S. response to that defiance has been a stark ultimatum for the military leaders who are left. Basically, let a pro-U.S. opposition government take over, or the bombing of Caracas will start again, and it will not stop. And this is where the warnings from analysts get really, really dire. They're pointing to recent history, to interventions in Iraq and Libya, where removing a regime without a solid post-war plan led directly to a power vacuum. The fear is that we're watching a repeat, the rise of rival militias, the total collapse of the state, and a chronic instability that could pose in the entire region for years to come. You know, we use that term decapitation strike a couple of times. Let's just quickly define it, because understanding the goal here is key. It's a military strategy that's all about removing the leadership of a hostile government. It's a massive gamble, and its success isn't just measured by whether you capture the leader. It's measured by the stability or the chaos that comes after. Which brings us to our final massive question. Abducting a sovereign leader, launching a full-scale invasion justified by your own domestic law. I mean, these are precedent-shattering events. It really makes you wonder, have we just watched the entire rulebook of international law get rewritten right before our very eyes?